You won't believe what just happened on live TV. Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and key Trump ally, just stormed off the set of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. No warning, no handshake, just raw tension and a shocking accusation that pushed her over the edge. What did Colbert say that made Bondi walk out in front of millions? Stick around, we're breaking it all down, and trust me, you don't want to miss this. From the moment she walked on stage, something felt off. That's what many viewers said after watching Pam Bondi's now infamous appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. It was supposed to be just another celebrity guest segment, some laughs, a few probing questions, maybe even a light-hearted exchange. But what unfolded was something far more tense, awkward, and ultimately explosive. Let's rewind to how it all began. Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, is no stranger to controversy. She rose to national prominence not just for her legal career, but for her high-profile defense of Donald Trump, especially during his first impeachment and the 2020 election challenges. She's sharp, polished, and always ready with a soundbite. But The Late Show isn't Fox News. And Stephen Colbert? He's not exactly known for softball interviews, especially when politics are involved. The audience was buzzing with anticipation that night. Colbert had teased a high-profile political guest in earlier segments, and when he introduced Bondi, there was a mix of polite applause and a few murmurs. She walked out in a sleek blazer, confident as ever, waving briefly before taking her seat. Colbert greeted her with a smile, though some viewers swear it was more of a smirk, and the interview began. Right away, the tone felt off. Colbert kicked things off with what seemed like a joke, but also a jab. Pam, you've been in the headlines quite a bit these past few years. Some would say you're one of the busiest lawyers not working for a law firm. The crowd chuckled. Bondi smiled tightly. Well, I've been working on a lot of important cases. And I'd argue the American people benefit more from my work than a private firm ever could. It was a firm, professional response. But the tension was already simmering. You could feel it in the air. Colbert, being Colbert, didn't stop there. He's built a reputation on walking that fine line between satire and confrontation. And he knows how to read a guest. When they lean in, he pulls back. When they get defensive, he presses harder. The conversation shifted to Bondi's legal past, her time as Florida's top prosecutor, and her high-profile cases involving healthcare fraud, environmental issues, and consumer protection. Bondi was clearly more comfortable here, listing off her accomplishments and defending her record. But that comfort didn't last long. Soon, Colbert turned the conversation toward her role during the 2020 election. He didn't dive into accusations right away, but the questions were getting sharper. You were part of the legal team that challenged the 2020 results in several states. Looking back now, do you feel that was the right move for democracy? Bondi's tone shifted ever so slightly. Still composed, but more pointed. I believe in transparency, I believe in election integrity, and I stand by the fact that Americans deserve to have confidence in their vote. Colbert leaned in a bit, his voice calm but more focused. But several courts, including judges appointed by Republicans, found no credible evidence of widespread fraud. So, at what point does questioning the system start to undermine it? The audience went quiet. Pam took a beat before responding. Look, Stephen, I didn't come here to debate the election. I came here to talk about what matters to Americans: safety, jobs, freedom. Colbert, isn't truth one of those things that should matter? That's when things really started heating up. Pam's expression hardened. I don't need to be lectured by someone who plays a character on TV, Stephen. I deal in facts, not scripted monologues. The crowd reacted audibly, some clapping, some gasping. Colbert kept his cool, but you could tell the interview had taken a serious turn. The banter was over. Now it was a battle. Colbert smiled politely. I understand that, Pam. But when people in positions of power challenge the integrity of elections without solid evidence, it can have real-world consequences, like January 6th. Don't you think public figures bear responsibility for the narratives they help spread?
Boom.
That was the question that changed everything. Bondi's entire posture shifted. She sat up straighter, her voice more controlled, but clearly bristling. You're walking a very dangerous line, Stephen. If you're trying to imply I'm responsible for what happened on January 6th, then this interview is over. Colbert clarified quickly. I didn't say that. I asked about responsibility in public discourse. There's a difference. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. And the next few seconds would be the last calm moment in what became one of the most unforgettable walkouts in late-night television history. The fallout from Pam Bondi's walkout was immediate, intense, and wide-reaching. But once the headlines cooled and the clips stopped trending, a deeper question emerged. What does this moment actually say about where we are as a society? This wasn't just about one interview. It was about how politics, media, and public accountability are handled in today's culture of constant attention and divided perception. At its core, the Bondi-Colbert moment captured a fundamental shift in how public discourse works. In a previous era, political interviews were structured, careful, and built around long-form dialogue. Today, they are often short, tense, and designed to go viral. Soundbites have replaced policy discussion. Emotion has replaced explanation. And walking away, literally or metaphorically, has become a political tactic. Pam Bondi chose to leave the stage instead of continue a conversation she felt was biased. Her supporters said she was protecting herself from a setup. Her critics said she was fleeing accountability. But both sides used that single act to confirm what they already believed. That's what made the moment powerful and troubling. In this new landscape, events aren't just witnessed. They're weaponized. A simple walkout becomes a fundraising tool. A sharp question becomes a personal attack. And instead of common ground, the outcome is often more division. This isn't unique to Pam Bondi. We've seen similar moments before. Public figures walking out of interviews, canceling appearances, or refusing to answer questions they deem unfair. But this one stood out because it happened on a comedy show. Stephen Colbert is known for blending humor with politics. His interviews often start light but turn serious quickly. Guests who expect a soft segment are sometimes met with unexpected challenges. Some rise to the moment. Others, like Bondi, choose to exit. The public reaction revealed how divided we are on what accountability looks like. For some, asking direct questions about someone's role in spreading election misinformation is a necessary act of journalism. For others, it's viewed as an ambush, especially when it comes from someone with a known political perspective. The fact that both of those interpretations can exist simultaneously and be promoted with equal intensity speaks to the fractured nature of public conversation. We no longer live in a media environment with shared truth. We live in separate echo chambers. And when a controversial moment happens, it's not processed in one national conversation. It's filtered, reframed, and distributed into separate realities. Bondi's walkout didn't change anyone's mind. It reinforced existing beliefs. If you thought she was part of a dangerous political movement, the walkout confirmed it. If you believed she was a victim of media bias, the walkout proved that too. That's why this moment matters beyond the clip itself. It shows how performative politics has become. Public figures now approach interviews not just as conversations, but as platforms for control. Every move is calculated. Every reaction is strategic. And if the situation becomes uncomfortable, there's always an exit plan. Leaving the stage, it turns out, can be just as powerful as staying and arguing. This strategy works because the consequences are no longer universal. You don't lose credibility across the board. You gain it with your base. You don't suffer from public embarrassment. You thrive within your own narrative. The real loss is in the space between. The middle ground. The place where disagreement leads to understanding and tension leads to growth. That's what disappeared during the Bondi-Colbert interview. And that's what continues to disappear in our political media environment. There's another factor to consider: the role of entertainment in shaping political opinion. The Late Show is not a hard news platform. It's a comedy show with a political edge. But for millions of viewers, it functions as both. That blurring of lines makes interviews like this one even more complex. Was Bondi a guest on a comedy show? Or a politician facing scrutiny? The answer, unfortunately, is both. This dual expectation creates confusion and conflict. Guests may prepare for humor, but be met with hard questions. Hosts may joke, but their audiences expect truth. And when the interview goes off script, it becomes unpredictable. That unpredictability is what the internet feeds on. In a time where attention is currency, dramatic exits are valuable. Viral clips are more impactful than full interviews. And the visual of a public figure walking away says more, to more people, than any soundbite ever could. So, what's the takeaway? Pam Bondi walking off Stephen Colbert's show was a small moment, but it exposed a much larger problem: the breakdown of shared dialogue. We're not just divided on issues. We're divided on how issues should be discussed, who gets to ask the questions, and what kind of response is acceptable. As long as public figures continue to treat tough questions as attacks, and interviewers are seen as partisans rather than professionals, these moments will continue. And with every walkout, the gap between discussion and division grows wider. In the end, Bondi left the interview. But the conversation didn't end. It just moved into the hands of the public, spinning, trending, reshaping, and splitting into millions of interpretations. What that moment meant depends entirely on where you stood before it happened. That's not just about one guest or one show. That's about where we are now as a nation and where we're heading. Pam Bondi's abrupt walkout didn't end with a dramatic exit on national television. It launched a media war, split public opinion, and triggered political responses across the spectrum. What followed wasn't just reaction. It was retaliation, reframing, and relentless spin. The day after the interview aired, every major news outlet covered the story. Cable news shows ran the walkout clip on a loop, each adding their own commentary. It quickly became clear that this was no longer just a late-night moment. It was a political event. On the right, conservative media rallied around Bondi. Fox News, Newsmax, and several prominent radio shows painted her as a victim of media bullying. Their message was consistent. Bondi had been lured into a hostile environment and attacked unfairly for holding political views that challenged the status quo. Tucker Carlson ran a segment titled "Pam Bondi Refuses to Play the Game," where he argued that Colbert's interview was a trap designed to embarrass a political rival. He claimed the walkout wasn't a meltdown, it was a stand. The same night, Sean Hannity said, "They invite people like Pam Bondi onto these shows just to humiliate them. It's not journalism. It's not comedy. It's activism." Bondi herself appeared on several conservative platforms to respond. In an interview with Laura Ingraham, she said, "I was there in good faith, ready to have a real discussion. What I got instead was a scripted ambush wrapped in a comedy show. That wasn't an interview. It was an interrogation." She maintained that her walkout was necessary. "When you realize the conversation isn't honest, you don't owe it your time," she said. On the left, liberal voices applauded Colbert for pressing Bondi on her role in spreading misinformation about the 2020 election. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow described the interview as a rare moment of accountability in a space that often avoids confrontation. CNN featured a panel discussion where analysts pointed out that Colbert hadn't raised his voice, hadn't cut her off, and hadn't insulted her. One guest commented, "If you walk off because you're asked to explain your public actions, maybe the actions speak for themselves." Social media followed the same polarized pattern. Conservative influencers praised Bondi as someone who walked away with dignity and refused to be part of the mainstream media circus. Some even began selling merchandise with slogans like, "Walked out, not backed down." Liberal commentators called the moment revealing, suggesting Bondi left because she didn't have a defensible answer to Colbert's questions. Memes circulated showing her walking away with captions like, "When the truth shows up, she leaves." Late-night hosts also joined in. Jimmy Kimmel joked, "I've seen people storm off game shows with more grace." Trevor Noah said, "This is what happens when your talking points don't come with a backup plan." In Washington, the political impact started to build. Democratic lawmakers used the moment to highlight the ongoing need for public accountability. One senator tweeted, "If you're bold enough to push lies on national TV, be bold enough to answer questions about it." Republican figures were more cautious. Some distanced themselves from the incident altogether. Others quietly supported Bondi's position without addressing the interview directly. One Republican strategist told Politico anonymously, "The optics weren't ideal. You never want to walk off a set, it looks like you're losing." But her base doesn't see it that way. They see it as strength. And that's exactly what happened. Bondi's supporters didn't just defend her, they turned the walkout into a rallying point. Within days, conservative PACs began using the footage in online ads. Bondi's name was trending in email campaigns. Supporters were asked to donate to help leaders stand strong against media manipulation. Meanwhile, Colbert's team kept quiet. They released no additional statements and declined follow-up interviews. Behind the scenes, producers reportedly stood by how the interview was handled, saying it was professional, respectful, and fair. Industry insiders began asking a deeper question. Should entertainment platforms like The Late Show play the role of political interrogators? Some said yes, arguing that when politicians appear on national TV, even in a comedy setting, they should expect real questions. Others warned that turning political interviews into viral spectacles may discourage honest dialogue altogether. One media columnist wrote, "We've moved past debate and into performance. Everyone's looking for their viral moment, either to dominate or to walk away." For Bondi, the walkout may have hurt her with moderates, but it strengthened her standing with the conservative base. In the days following the incident, her social media following grew. Interviews and speaking invitations increased. She leaned into the controversy, using it to define herself as someone who wouldn't be cornered or shamed. But critics remained vocal. They said her refusal to engage seriously with questions about democracy wasn't strength, it was avoidance. One political analyst summarized it this way: Colbert asked questions. Bondi walked away. And both sides saw exactly what they wanted to see. The fallout wasn't just political. It was cultural. The interview became a case study in how divided the country remains, not just over facts, but over how we define truth, accountability, and public discourse. Pam Bondi may have walked out of The Late Show, but the story she left behind kept walking on its own. In less than a minute, a tense interview turned into one of the most talked-about moments on television. Pam Bondi walking off The Late Show with Stephen Colbert didn't just end the segment. It set off a media firestorm and went viral in real time. Let's look at how that moment unfolded and how quickly it escalated beyond the studio walls. As Bondi removed her microphone and stood up, the audience was frozen in silence. Colbert, taken slightly off guard, tried to smooth things over with a quick closing line. "Well," he said, "that's one way to wrap up a conversation." The audience gave a few awkward chuckles. The band played a subdued transition tune. The show quickly cut to commercial, and Colbert never returned to the subject during the remaining minutes. But even though the cameras had stopped rolling, the story was just beginning. Within 15 minutes, social media exploded. Viewers who had been watching live clipped the walkout and uploaded it to Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. The hashtags #PamBondiWalkout, #ColbertClash, and #LateShowMeltdown began trending. Reaction videos started appearing almost instantly. Some creators focused on the body language. Others analyzed the dialogue. Most simply expressed shock at what they had just seen. On Twitter, opinions were sharply divided. Some called it a powerful moment of accountability. Others said it was a deliberate setup. One user wrote, "Colbert asked a fair question. She couldn't answer. That's not a walkout, it's a retreat." Another responded, "Pam Bondi isn't afraid to walk away when the bias is that obvious. She knew what this was." By the end of the night, the original clip had been viewed more than 5 million times on Twitter alone. TikTok edits reached another 3 million. YouTube reaction channels titled their uploads with phrases like "Pam Bondi explodes on Colbert," "Unscripted TV gold," and "Walkout heard" round the nation. News outlets were quick to weigh in. CNN aired the clip with commentary about the risks of blending comedy and journalism. MSNBC framed it as a moment of accountability for a public figure who helped spread misinformation. Over on Fox News, anchors defended Bondi's decision to walk out, calling the interview a media ambush designed to provoke a reaction. The next morning, The Late Show's YouTube channel uploaded the full interview under the title, "Pam Bondi Walks Off During Tense Interview." It instantly hit the trending page. The video's comment section filled up with heated debates. Some viewers praised Colbert for pressing the issue. Others accused him of trying to manufacture a viral moment at the expense of real discussion. Meanwhile, Bondi's spokesperson released a short statement. Pam Bondi will not participate in partisan setups disguised as interviews. She walked away because the facts matter more than performative media tactics. That statement didn't cool things down. It added fuel to the fire. Media analysts began speculating on whether the walkout was spontaneous or calculated. Some suggested Bondi had planned it to energize her political base and position herself as a victim of mainstream media bias. Others believed it was a genuine reaction to a question she was unprepared for. Several political commentators noted that this kind of viral moment can now become a campaign asset. A few conservative outlets reported that clips from the walkout were already being used in fundraising emails and messaging campaigns. On the other side, liberal commentators saw the walkout as proof of an unwillingness to engage in honest debate. One op-ed described it as a perfect snapshot of the current political climate, public figures who talk loudly but leave when challenged. Late-night television has always included politics, but this moment stood out. It wasn't a scripted sketch or a rehearsed exchange. It was unscripted tension, real-time fallout, and instant public judgment. The next night, Colbert briefly addressed the walkout. "We had a guest walk off the show last night," he said. "I guess some people do cardio interviews now." The audience laughed, but Colbert quickly returned to a serious tone. "Asking tough questions isn't an ambush," he added. "It's part of being in the public eye. If your answers can't stand up to basic scrutiny, maybe the questions aren't the problem." The statement was brief but firm, and it only reignited the online debate. People began comparing the moment to other famous political walkouts in television history. Some saw it as a defining clash between media and politics. Others dismissed it as another flash of viral drama that would be forgotten in a week. But the numbers said otherwise. Clips of the walkout continued to rack up views. Commentary videos appeared across the political spectrum. Hashtags trended for a second day. The conversation was still very much alive. In the days that followed, Bondi was invited onto several conservative talk shows to tell her side of the story. Each appearance focused on the same narrative, that she was mistreated, interrupted, and disrespected. Colbert's team declined to make further comments beyond the show's original statement. Ultimately, the walkout became more than just a late-night TV moment. It became a symbol, depending on who you ask, of either media overreach or political evasion. One thing is clear, this wasn't just another celebrity interview. It was a flashpoint, a cultural clash, and a reminder that in today's world, one unscripted moment can reach millions, reshape narratives, and spark national debate before the commercial break is even over. "Are you saying I lied to the American people?" Those were the words that sent shockwaves across the studio, the control room, and eventually across the entire internet. The tension had been rising minute by minute, but when Pam Bondi snapped back with that line, everyone in the room knew the conversation had just crossed a line. Let's unpack exactly how it all unfolded. After the tense back and forth in the earlier part of the interview, Stephen Colbert made a conscious decision to shift into what many consider the heart of the controversy, Bondi's role in the post-2020 election legal challenges. He didn't raise his voice, and he didn't get sarcastic. In fact, it was his calm and deliberate tone that made the moment even more jarring. Colbert: "Pam, there were dozens of lawsuits, multiple recounts, and not one court, state or federal, found substantial evidence of fraud in the 2020 election. But you stood in front of cameras in multiple states, insisting that something was wrong. Looking back, was that honest?" The room went dead silent. No applause, no laughter, just raw, unfiltered silence. Pam Bondi blinked slowly, as if absorbing the full weight of the question. Then she leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but sharp. "Bondi, I stood up for millions of Americans who had questions. That was my duty, and I won't apologize for defending their right to transparency." Colbert nodded slowly, then followed up. "Defending transparency is one thing, but amplifying disproven claims is another. Isn't there a difference between asking questions and feeding conspiracy theories?" That was the match that lit the fuse. Bondi immediately pushed back, harder than before. Bondi, now hold on. That's a loaded accusation, and I won't sit here and let you smear my name under the disguise of comedy journalism. Colbert, sensing the rising tension but committed to the exchange, clarified. This isn't about smearing anyone. I'm just asking, do you regret making statements that may have contributed to distrust in democracy? Bondi scoffed. Bondi, I regret agreeing to do this show. If I had known I was walking into an ambush, I'd have stayed home. And that was it, the turning point. At that exact moment, social media began buzzing. Studio audience members pulled out phones. Even Colbert's production crew reportedly started exchanging glances off camera. Everyone could sense what was coming next. Then came the words that changed the entire tone of the show. Colbert, Pam, I'm not ambushing you. I'm holding you accountable. You were a public official who helped promote claims that courts ruled false. That's not my opinion. That's a matter of legal record. And that's when Bondi lost it, not in a screaming, dramatic meltdown, but in the quiet, chilling way that people do when they've reached their limit. She removed her microphone. Slowly, deliberately. No yelling. No name-calling. Just a calm, cold response. Bondi, I won't be part of a hit job. This interview is over. She stood up, straightened her jacket, and walked off the set, live, on air. Colbert, clearly caught off guard, tried to lighten the moment with a smile. Okay, well, guess that's all the time we had. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the audience, but no one was really laughing. Within seconds, producers cut to commercial, but it was too late. The moment had already been captured, clipped, and uploaded. Twitter, now X, exploded. TikTok edits were appearing within minutes. YouTube reaction channels started rolling out clips of the moment with titles like Pam Bondi Walkout, What Really Happened? Stephen Colbert calls out Bondi, Chaos ensues. Live TV meltdown, Pam Bondi walks off set. Some viewers applauded Colbert for holding a political figure to account. Others accused him of ambushing a guest just to create a viral moment. But nearly everyone agreed, this wasn't normal late-night TV. This was something else entirely. The fallout began immediately. Bondi's spokesperson released a brief, but pointed statement within the hour. Pam Bondi will not be silenced or subjected to partisan attacks disguised as interviews. She walked away, because the facts matter more than theatrics. Meanwhile, clips from the segment aired across every major news outlet. CNN called it an interview gone nuclear. Fox News labeled it liberal media bullying. And The View? Well, let's just say they had plenty to say, and none of it was quiet. Political analysts chimed in, too. Some suggested Bondi's walkout was intentional, a pre-planned moment designed to rile up her base and present her as a victim of so-called mainstream media bias. Others argued she had no good answers, and walking out was her only option. But one thing was clear, the accusation Colbert made, that Bondi helped spread false narratives about the 2020 election, struck a nerve. Not just with her, but with a country still divided over what happened that year. And for many viewers, this wasn't just about Pam Bondi. It was about something bigger. A question hanging in the air. Can public figures be held accountable on entertainment platforms? Or has everything, including the truth, become part of the performance?